All right, so here we want to divide x squared minus 5x minus 18. All right, we want to divide that by x plus 3. But here we want to use synthetic division. Okay, so synthetic division is another way to divide, but we can only use synthetic division under very certain circumstances. And that the condition is that the divisor, right, must be what's known as a linear factor, right? It has to be an x. It can't be like in 2x or 5x or even like an x squared or like an x to the third power, okay? So it has to be in the form where we say x minus c, okay? So in this case, the value of c right here, right? If x plus 3 is the divisor, right? What is the value of c here, right? C in this case is negative 3, right? So that's what we want to divide by. We want to divide by negative 3. Now, one thing we want to remember about division, right? What happens if we divide and the remainder is 0, right? So this is another theorem here, right? If the remainder is 0, right? So if the remainder equals 0, then what can we conclude about c? Then c is a root. We call it a root, we call it a 0, we call it a solution, right? So we can do the synthetic division, right? And we can get the quotient, we can get the remainder if it's there. But if the remainder is 0, then we know that this value of negative 3 is going to be a solution or a 0, right? So let's go ahead and do this synthetic division, right? So what's the first step? Okay, so the setup is, let's just write the negative 3 out here. Not positive 3, right? You got to be careful. So we'll write out the negative 3 and we'll do this little half box here. And in the box, we're going to put the coefficients of the polynomial, right? So what's the coefficient of x squared? The coefficient of x squared here is just 1. The coefficient of x is negative 5. And the coefficient of, well, this is just a negative 18, right? That's the last term, so we'll just write that down. So the main thing to remember here is we multiply and add, right? We call it multiply and add. So what do we mean by that? Well, the first thing is we always bring down the first term. We always bring down the first term, so let's just bring that down as a 1. And now we multiply and add. So what do we multiply together? We multiply the 1 times negative 3, right? So 1 times negative 3 is negative 3, but then we add these two, this column together, right? Negative 5 plus negative 3 is negative 8. And then we do just repeat this. We multiply. So negative 3 times negative 8 is positive 24. And then we add these together to get positive 6. This is the remainder. The last box here, or the last entry, is always going to be the remainder. Well, if this is the remainder, then what do these two numbers equal? All right, these two numbers are the coefficient of the divisor, but it has to be 1 degree less, right? So let's take a look. We started out with an x squared. Remember, think about this. This was 1x squared minus 5x minus 18, right? So once we divide it by x, this should be the coefficient of a polynomial that is 1 degree less. So what is 1 degree less than x squared? That's x. So we can write this answer as, if we did this properly, right, the answer would be x minus 8 with a remainder of 6 over x plus 3. Now once again, if the remainder was 0, then what can we conclude? Right? If the remainder was 0, then we can conclude that whatever we divided, right, that this is the answer, okay, and that negative 3 would be a 0. Okay? But in this case, there was no remainder. Okay? I'm sorry, there was a remainder. The remainder here was 6.